Well, hello, and you're very welcome to What's the Story, a brand new show that is all about books with me, Meghann Scully. In this series, we're going to fall in love with reading all over again and dive under the covers of some great books with some amazing guests. She's been reading the back of cornflakes boxes for as long as she can remember. Joining me today for our very first episode, we have a wonderful writer and broadcaster, Nadine O'Regan. You're very welcome, Nadine.
Thank you, delighted to be here.
Also joining us, we have a man who describes himself as a West Cavan cat lover that enjoys putting pens in his beard and being cruel to fictional children. He is teacher turned award-winning author, Dave Rudden. You're very welcome, Dave.
Thanks very much. Fictional children, let me be clear. Fictional children.
I have to ask about this quirky habit and how many pens you can fit in that beard of yours.
I can fit 24 pens in my beard, which is the most impressive thing in my life, basically.
And completing our illustrious lineup is an author who truly has the Midas touch. Her debut novels, P.S. I Love You and Where Rainbows End, aka Love Rosie, were both adapted for film. Her 2018 book, Roar, is now in development with Nicole Kidman's Blossom Films. And now, her latest novel, Freckles, has just hit the shelves. Cecelia Ahern, how are you getting on?
Hi, I'm very good, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
I can only fit one pen in my beard, unfortunately.
Well, I was going to ask about any quirky talents, but I have to say I'm loving that bookshelf behind you and how well put together it is.
It's the only nice corner of this room.
Any quirky talents, though? Any other hidden talents that you're not sharing with us?
I have absolutely no talents whatsoever, but habits. I still suck my thumb. I'm nearly 40 years old and I suck my thumb and I have a blanket. So, but I don't know if that's a talent.
Well, I think, maybe for another day, we're all going to get together and we can all show off our quirky talents. But I think for now, we might just stick with the books. Dave, I have to ask about your earliest memory of reading, maybe like the first book that you can remember having.
So I'm not sure if I can remember the first book that I ever read. My parents used to bring me to libraries all the time because it was the only way of making me stay quiet. And so I used to go to Ballyconnell Library, this tiny postage stamp size library in West Cavan. And I very swiftly read all the age appropriate books there. And then I just moved on to reading everything. So I have read more Danielle Steele novels than really a 9-year-old boy should have read. Very important formative parts of my development.
Interesting for your childhood, Nadine. What about you, Danielle Steele, or what were you reading?
Oh gosh, absolutely. I read everything that I could get my hands on. Everything from Danielle Steele, the Catherine Cooks and the Jilly Cooper. Sure, we all did it. They were on the bookshelves. You just took them down, and often I'd get a little torch. I'd read under the duvet covers so that I could just read undisturbed the whole way through the night. Even at school, I was always reading novels underneath my actual, or behind the folds of the actual school books. So yeah, fiction for me was just a huge draw. It didn't matter what it was, I was into it.
Some very unusual childhood books. Cecelia, what have you got to add to that?
I can't remember the very first book, but I remember as a very small kid reading The Enormous Turnip over and over again. I just thought this was the most incredible story, about the turnip that just won't stop growing. So yeah, I bought that for my kids, and I don't know what it is that fascinates me about that story, but that's probably the root of all the madness that has come since. But growing up then, I loved Sweet Valley Twins and all the Eden and Blyton books, the Famous Five. Yeah, I read all of that. And they all had a number as well in the corner. So I remember a whole group of friends just working our way through the hundreds and hundreds of books that they had in the collection.
Absolutely incredible. And some great trips to memory lane.
Pokemon.
Oh, I can't beat a bit of those. Well, right, I think it's time we get on to our first book now. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. That's about as far as you get, counting backwards as you wait for surgery to begin. And that's all most people know about what I do. But what happens between you conking out and waking up? And what does the anaesthetist have to do with it all? Do they just sit around playing Sudoku while the rest of the team do all the hard work? And why are they so obsessed with what you ate for dinner? It's Gas Man by Colin Black. And I have to say, I just love reading the back of this book. And Dave, you'll have to tell us a little bit about this story. But first of all, can you remember any time that you maybe got knocked out in the medical sense and what happened?
My life has improved immeasurably ever since I found out for like serious dental procedures, you can just ask the doctor to knock you out. So I go in with a sleep mask and I'm just like, wake me up after, and I like wake up at home with like a cup of tea and it's just like much easier. Like it's, yeah. So I went into this with some interest. There's a bit of a growing trend of doctor books. I know that This Is Going to Hurt by Auntie McKay sold like gangbusters, and this book is in a similar vein, no pun intended. The premise essentially is that it's sort of a working diary from the perspective of an anesthesiologist, which I have practiced saying all week. Technically in Ireland you call them anesthetists, but there's no way I'm going to try and say that word more than once. You get this sort of run through of the training involved in anesthesiology, and then these one-page anecdotes, each one a day in the life of this doctor in their first year as a consultant pediatric anesthetist. The author can write. She's certainly really good at conveying what is a very complicated and difficult job well to a lay person like me. There are moments of real power and beauty in this book, you know, the pain of losing a patient, the trials and tribulations of working specifically with children. So kids are unsurprisingly unpredictable. Their veins are smaller. You have to be so careful in how you explain procedures to them. I think we've probably all experience the terrifying honesty of kids when they ask questions, and that's made a lot more complicated when it's life or death. And there are very funny moments and funny anecdotes in the book, particularly as somebody who has a toddler. He tells a story of a moment mid-surgery where this toddler stands up and just starts going, ah, and starts pulling tubes out.
Oh, God.
He really wanted a hug, apparently. Very cute. So there's lots of really like cute stories and heartbreaking stories, you know, about dealing with, especially because sometimes kids are absolute troopers about these things, but it's the parents who are terrified. There was one in particular that got me where a kid came in absolutely terrified because he was getting a cast taken off his broken leg. And turns out it was because his dad told him he was getting his leg cut off. And so the kid was bawling and the doctor was like, that's not what you've made my job so much more difficult. Why are your dad jokes like this? So it's really fascinating.
I know I got knocked out only 2 years ago for my wisdom teeth, and I think I got down to like, I think I got to 9 and I was gone. And I remember waking up and thinking that I was in the pub, and I just couldn't understand why I was in a hospital bed. So I think it's really cool to get the insight from them, because I remember him coming in to say, I'm your anaesthetist, I'm going to do this procedure now. And I was like, I have no idea what's going on.
Just be grateful that you got that for your wisdom tooth, because I didn't. She took it out in the chair.
Oh no! Oh, I was keen out for it.
My wife brought me home from my last sort of dental appointment, and apparently in the taxi on the way home, I really needed to call Oprah. I don't know why I needed to call Oprah. It was very important that I get through to Oprah. I had something very important to tell her. The taxi driver was very amused.
Well, if you ever get Oprah's number, please do share it with me, because I love her book. So there you have it. Another book to add to your reading list. But if you need more inspiration, we've got you covered. Author Sinead Moriarty has been rifling through the shelves for this month's must-reads.
I'm delighted to be introducing the Eason Top Picks for breakthrough books by Irish female writers. As an Irish female writer myself, it's an absolute joy to be promoting other Irish female writers. First up, we have Meghann Nolan's Act of Desperation. This is a fantastic book. The main character has this incredibly obsessive and dysfunctional relationship with a Danish writer. It also talks about her dysfunctional relationship with alcohol and food. You've got everything in this book. Bleak, but you will not forget the character. Absolutely fantastic. Next up, we have Sally Rooney's Conversation with Friends. She has since gone on to have a globally successful writing career. This was her debut book. It's about 4 characters whose lives overlap, and they're all trying to figure out who they are and where they fit in. This is Michelle Gallen's Big Girl, Small Town. Magella, the main character here, is somebody you will fall in love with. She works in the chipper, her life's pretty miserable, and she doesn't really like people. But living in a small town, everybody wants to know everything about Magella. Now we have When All Is Said by Anne Griffin. This is a fantastic story of Maurice Hannigan, who's sitting up at the bar. He's 84 years old, looking back over his life and the 5 people who were the most important to him. It's about regret, and it's also about redemption. A cracking read. I love this debut, Snowflake by Louise Nealon. It's a gorgeous story of a young girl leaving her dairy farm in Kildare to start the big university in Trinity and how she just doesn't fit in. It's also about her very dysfunctional but loving family back on the dairy farm. A gorgeous debut. Highly recommend it. Next up, we have Lisa Mcinerney's The Glorious Heresies. This is not for the faint-hearted. It starts off with an accidental murder and then just goes absolutely nuts. It's brilliant, it's heart-stopping, and it's incredibly original. This is Nisha Dolan's Exciting Times. This is kind of a unusual love story set in Hong Kong. Nisha is an amazing observer of life and people. Really, really, really interesting insights into people's behaviour. Loved this. So now we have Boys Don't Cry by Fiona Scarlett. This book is beautiful, it's heartbreaking, you will laugh and you will cry and you will not be able to put it down. It's an absolutely beautiful read. Now we have Unimaginance, A Crooked Tree. This is set in America and it's about how one summer's night, something goes wrong and the fallout of this night is devastating upon this family. It's a beautifully written novel, very atmospheric. You feel like you're there with the family in America. Absolutely cracking. And finally, the absolutely cracking Milkman by Anna Burns, winner of the Booker Prize 2018 and the Dublin Literary Award 2020. This is a dark, dark black humour book set in the North. It is equally hilarious and devastating. An absolutely fantastic read. I loved it. And there you have it. These are the top picks by Eason of breakthrough Irish female writers. What an unbelievable selection.
Now, Nadine, I have to ask you about any funny books that you've ever read or something that jumps out at you.
Oh, you know, often with books, for humour, I often actually go to non-fiction and regularly to journalists, actually. I don't know if you've ever read books by Catelyn Moran or John Ronson, and I just find them both very, very funny, but in extremely different ways. Catelyn Moran is very well known as a British journalist who's a fantastic columnist. So she's collected several volumes of her columns and she's also written kind of memoir-style books. But the thing that I actually love about her is she finds the humour in everyday life and tells you about things that you've always thought, but you've never seen someone else actually write down. And sometimes it can, you know, be something really, really tiny or something health related. She's more honest about cystitis than I've ever seen any woman be ever. But she's one of those people that she has a wonderful turn of phrase and she kind of gets other people. She connects. Her writing connects really strongly. John Ronson is a very different type of writer. He's a journalist, a documentary maker, and his books are exploratory. He often goes off and interviews extremists, or, you know, there's a book called The Men Who Stare at Goats. There's another book actually which is far more serious, which is about social media and the shaming that can come from social media. So he's able to kind of go between the very serious and the very funny. He's also a columnist. He wrote a column for years for The Guardian, which was absolutely brilliant. So either of those two I would highly recommend.
Can't say I've spent much time staring at goats, but I've certainly spent time staring at sheep back home. Dave, any funny books for us?
I'm a huge fan of Terry Pratchett. I just think he's such a witty, kind, compassionate writer and has created this sort of ridiculous fantasy world called Discworld where kind of anything is possible, but he uses it as a really sharp way of talking about our world and about taking sort of concepts from our world. He's a book about the invention of the first newspaper and uses that to talk about our own media and uses it to like sort of shine a light on the human condition.
Cecelia, any laugh out loud books?
I don't know if I do laugh out loud books, but I really love, one of my favourite kind of genres to read is absurdist fiction. I love surreal, kind of quirky, unusual novels. So Andrew Kaufman is one of my favourite novelists. He's written The Tiny Wife and All My Friends Are Superheroes. And he writes very, do you know what I'm seeing? Nodding.
Oh,
no one
love
ever
that
knows
book.
his book like them. Yeah? Okay. And I just love, I suppose when you take magic and metaphor, for me, those type of books usually can shine even more of a light on human truth than straightforward linear books. So they're amusing, but they're more eye-opening more than anything. But yeah, I recommend him.
I feel like I need to write all these down because there's so much food for thought. But for now, we're going to move on to our next book. Western science is just beginning to realise what Indigenous cultures have always known, what our ancestors knew: water has the power to heal. It allows for the ebb and flow, the waxing and the waning, the luminosity and the darkness. If something is lost, perhaps it can also be found again. Salt Water in the Blood by Eason Britton. Nadine, you've been reading this now. Before you get to the book, I know you're a big fan of water yourself, into surfing.
Yes, I used to absolutely love surfing before I had a knee-related injury, but I went surfing so many times, Canary Islands, Biarritz. Yeah, I used to go off on my own and just go to, there were kind of like surf clubs that you could go to, and you just have a very, very hippie, bohemian kind of week where you'd go surfing in the daytimes and then have like barbecues in the evening with your surf club. It was amazing. One thing that I can't do, see, I love my phone. I'm on the internet all the time. I'm on social media all the time. You can't actually hold a phone while you're surfing, it turns out.
That would be pretty incredible.
So That's what I've been doing wrong, okay.
You do have to be very in the moment, and I find that really helpful.
Yeah. But onto the book by Eason Britton, you know, it does say water has the power to heal, which I think we can all agree with, but talk to us about the story.
Yeah, so it's a story of her life growing up in Donegal with her surf-loving family. Eason, she's named after a surf break in Sligo, and the name Eason itself is a version of Iskig, so fish. So it almost seems predestined that she would become a surfer, and she became an exceptional surfer and has gone on. The book tracks her story. It's her time going through competitive surfing, but also realising that maybe competitive surfing really wasn't for her, because the book has a very strong, I suppose, self-help kind of element to it as well, where she's talking about the sea and the restorative power of the sea. How, and I think we all saw this during the pandemic, that if you're having a really tough time and you just go and plunge yourself into cold water, dry robe or no afterwards, you do feel better. So the book is a little bit about that. It's a little bit self-helpy, very bohemian, and then it tracks her story. Her father and her mother come across very well in this book, and the father in particular, he absolutely has been addicted to surfing, so much so that when he was growing up and there were no wetsuits in the family, they would put on Ahern jumpers in an attempt to see if that would work, to insulate them in the water. It doesn't work.
I just thinking there,
it doesn't work.
An Ahern jumper in the water.
Yeah, really odd. But so as the book wears on, you'll see it in, she has a lot of line drawing. She's an artist as well, so she has some poetry, and the book broadens out into kind of a deeper understanding of what it means to be in the here and now. And she talks a lot about the fear and insecurity that she's experienced over the years. She has a very uncertain profession. She has a doctorate, but like most of us in the gig economy, sometimes you don't know where the next opportunity is coming from. So I think actually as the book wears on, she becomes more confident in expressing that side of herself and showing the vulnerability, and I found that very appealing.
Well, I love it. And I think even just chatting to you now, I was like, I want to go for a dip later on or else tomorrow. Now it's time that we go on to our final book, 5 People, 5 Chances, One Woman's Search for Happiness. I think we need to set the scene here now for this one. Allegra Bird's arms are scattered with Freckles, a gift from her beloved father. But despite her nickname, Freckles has never been able to join the dots. So when a stranger tells her that everyone is the average of the 5 people they spend the most time with, it opens up something deep inside. Coming to a cinema near you soon, no doubt. This is Freckles, and its brilliant author is Cecelia Ahern.
Hey, it was beautiful, thank you. So moving.
Do you think maybe I could do the introduction for when it does come to the cinema?
In a world where someone has freckles.
a lot of us, I think, can relate to the whole freckles and, you know, joining up our freckles. But there's a lot more to this story. Tell us about Allegra.
Yeah, so Allegra, as you've said, her nickname is Freckles, and she's a parking warden who hears this expression from a very angry man who she's just ticketed. And he says, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And she takes this as an insult because he means it as an insult. And she starts examining the 5 people in her life and tries to figure out like what their characters say about who she is. Realizes that if she is the average of the 5 people, then she has the ability to curate her life. I mean, she can choose a very specific set of 5 people to become the average of them. So the story is about her kind of reaching out to these 5 people, somebody in sports, somebody in business, somebody from her past, somebody in politics, and somebody that she wants to get to know more in her future, in the hope that she can kind of shape herself and become somebody else. I think that's the spine of the story, but it really is about so much more. It is about her and her identity, loneliness and human connection, and really trying to find a place where she belongs and people that she belongs with.
And being the author, did you have to step into Allegra's shoes, and did you surround yourself with 5 people? Did you do this in real life?
No. I think when I'm writing, I don't, I put myself into the character's situation, yes, but I don't suddenly start looking at my 5 people. And I think it's really about I think you could ask this question at lots of different phases of your life, and the answer will be different. Depend if you move neighborhood, if you start a new job, it's the people that you spend the most time with. So it's not the 5 people in your life that have shaped you. That's kind of a different question. And what has been interesting, of course, I think about myself when I'm writing it, but probably the 5 people are not who you would immediately think they would be. It could be someone at the bus stop that you speak to every morning, and you might have more conversation with them in the whole week than you would with a friend. So it's really to think about who are the 5 people who are kind of not who are inspiring you without you really realizing it, and who are shaping your day and shaping your character and shaping your thoughts. So it could be, that coffee that you get every day and the chat that you have with the person who's there. And Allegra lives in a very, I've said it in Malahide, which is where I live. And she works the beat, she walks the beat, and she has a very rhythmic, disciplined, focused life where she's, at the same place at the same time, meets the same people at the same time. And hearing this phrase just kind of knocks her off her axis, and she has to rediscover everything, really, rediscover herself.
And of course, as you know, you've written so many books. Are you constantly working on the next one, or do you ever give yourself a break between them?
Well, I always have to have a break, naturally. But I think I just have that kind of mind where I'm always looking around for inspiration. I'm not necessarily looking for it, but I find it. It's just the way my head works. So, I always have a couple of different things going on, lots of different ideas. And I've just finished my 19th novel, so I'm kind of gearing up to start thinking about the 20th, which I really can't believe. I can't believe I'm on number 20, considering I haven't aged a bit since the first. So it's a miracle, really.
Cecelia, we did mention, of course, the top about some of your debut books, and of course, P.S. I Love You, which I think I actually watch it every year now, and I cry and cry and cry every single time. When you're now writing books, is that in the back of your mind? Could this be my next big cinematic, film, or what way is it for you?
I don't write a novel thinking it could be a movie. I think I have to write them all in the same way. But I think the reason why many of them have become TV or film is because I write in a cinematic way, and that's kind of my style. They're very visual stories, and they have mostly a strong concept, which film and TV people like. But no, I think that's just, it's due to my style and not necessarily works the other way around. But they're not all, they're not all suitable for film and TV, but I just have to write them naturally as they come.
And Nicole Kidman now, working on one of your books as well. That must be just amazing, pinch me moment.
Oh, it's incredible, and it's Roar. It was a collection of my short stories with this very kind of surreal, unusual, quirky bunch of stories about 30 women. And so we have 8 episodes with 8 different actors, 8 half-hour episodes for Roar or for Apple TV Plus. So it just finished. It just wrapped in the last few days, and just it's incredible, really, to take something that, to be honest, is more unusual than anything else I've written, and I kind of write a lot of unusual stuff, and to see that come to life by this dream team is fantastic, made up stories and Blossom Films, and it's amazing. It's a dream come true. It's always very emotional and overwhelming, and just such an exciting moment. I can't wait for people to see it.
It is. It's so incredible. And do you get much involvement once it goes to the kind of filming stage at all, or how does it work for you as an author?
Yes, I'm executive producer on this, so I've more say than I've ever had, which is fantastic, and it's a position I kind of I'm really enjoying and learning a lot about. So yeah, in all the rooms for every conversation, which is which is important to me now. It didn't happen at the beginning because I was a young author who didn't know about being an author, never mind producer. So, but I think the more projects I've done, the more I realize what I want to get from them and what they need. And so, yes, I do like to be involved more and more.
That's absolutely amazing. And of course, Ed, we are talking about Freckles today and your latest book. And I have to say, it just sounds absolutely incredible. And Allegra, or even just reading about from the back of the synopsis, I already feel like I can visualize Allegra. I feel like I know what this girl already looks like and her personality and everything. I feel like you've already painted a picture of her in just these few lines.
Oh, that's brilliant. And, you know, it is based on a business motivational quote from Jim Rohn. And it's the idea that, you know, if you're surrounded by successful people, you'll be successful, or, you know, or you choose the people, someone who can encourage you, someone who can ground you, someone who can keep you uplifted. You know, all that we need, we can't have yes people, we can't be surrounded by yes people, but it's important as well, you know, if you're looking at your life, not to necessarily cut people out, but toxic relationships aren't good for you. If you've got people who are draining you and making you feel unhappy, you don't necessarily have to allow those 5 people into your inner circle. That's for you to choose and for you to, you know, you have to find your own happy and choose wisely the people that you let into your heart. So it's a lot about that as well.
Yeah, I think that is so profound as well. And I look forward to reading more about Allegra and seeing her on the big screen someday as well.
Oh, perhaps. Thank you very much.
And that's it from us for now. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to our wonderful guests, Dave Rudden, Nadine O'Regan and Cecelia Ahern. Happy reading, and join us next month when Jamie O'Connell, Trina McCarthy and Colm Tobin will be telling us about their literary guilty pleasures and some new brilliant books hitting the shelves in October. As always, let us know what you've been reading by tweeting with the hashtag #What'sTheStory. We'll see you soon.